What's up, everybody? Welcome to another live stream edition of Seahawks Forever. I'm Dan Viennes. Do you think I went too far with the Christmas stuff? Just feeling in the spirit. Back home in West Virginia now. Got the tree up yesterday, all ready for the holiday. A little later than usual because I had to go back to Seattle last week. But hey, this is just an opportunity for you and me, for all of us to hang out, to maybe do some therapy, go back over what happened on Sunday with the Colts, flush that, and then look ahead to the Rams. The crux of tonight's show is going to be you. Your questions, your takes, my answers and opinions, I guess. We'll debate and discuss before we move on to the Rams. This is Seahawks Forever. Thanks for being here.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viennes.
Kind of a loose structure to this one. I've got some things queued up. We'll take a look at the playoff picture currently as it stands, how it would look, and then how it's projected. We'll take a look at some playoff scenarios, what it'll take for the Seahawks to clinch, what it'll take for them to win the division, what it'll take for them to get the number one seed. How cool is that we're talking about that here heading into week 16. Some interesting history at play here. Seahawks with 11 wins now, already eclipsing last year's total, even though they missed the playoffs last year. They've only won 11 games 7 other times in their history. They've never won 14 games, and so that is still obviously within their grasp if they were to run the table. They've won 13 games twice, and if they do it again, a couple things at stake here. Number one, I get to hear Bryce Coots and John McGrath tell me over and over again that they were on 13-4 island the entire season. But also the other 2 times that they won 13 games, they went to the Super Bowl, 2005, 2013. So that would bode well for them this time as well, right? Let's start with a couple things here. And by the way, we're still waiting. I just checked again, waiting for some today's injury updates. Players are already speaking at the podium, and so I thought we would have had those by now. It's just going to be a walkthrough again, according to Coach McDonald, because of the short week. So they'll have to estimate what players' participation would have been. But namely, of course, we're waiting to hear an update on Charles Cross, who strained his hamstring on the final play of the game-winning field goal against the Rams. Look, should Charles Cross have to miss this game, that would obviously be a blow. But I loved what I saw from Josh Jones during the preseason, especially in all the preseason games, having to play left tackle. If you remember, Charles Cross missed all of the preseason games because of that finger injury he had to have surgery on. Liked what I saw from Josh Jones. I certainly think they're in a much better place this year to be able to withstand the loss of either of their tackles than they were last year when it was supposed to be George Fant. He got hurt week 1. And then it was Stone Forsythe, who was supposed to be a guy that they were grooming to be a swing tackle, just never really. In fact, I feel like he got worse every year. And then they even had to run Michael Jarrell out there, the Division II 6th-round draft pick, at times last year as well. Much, much better shape this time around, should they have to go without Charles Cross for this game. Sounds like Abe Lucas is fine. He had that shoulder injury, you remember, where he had to leave the game for a bit on Sunday. Josh Jones had to come in a couple of times in that game, but Lucas was able to finish out, and Mike McDonald made it sound yesterday like there was no real concern there. The other injury coming out of the game was Derek Hall with his finger. Sounds like that's fine. Won't be holding him back this week at all. So the Seahawks are in pretty good shape injury-wise, even if Cross can't go. The other news today, D'Anthony Bell has been waived. I think there's a good chance he gets claimed. I mean, this time of year, teams are banged up. He's a great special teams player. He's a good veteran presence. I think that might be a little dicey getting him through waivers to the practice squad. The assumption is Corbin Smith just tweeted this out a little bit ago that might mean that Drake Young might be on his way back from injured reserve this week as well. Certainly another positive sign. Good news for the Seahawks special teams and their wide receiver depth. Let's do a couple of things. First, a couple little newsy items because of the shortened week, it changes up our programming as well. NFC West mixtape with Rob Guerrera and I taking a look around the division will be tomorrow instead of Thursday because we want to be able to get out ahead of the game and talk extensively about that matchup. So look for that tomorrow. Also tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern, is the Seahawks Syndicate. We pushed it back a week from last week, in part because of some things I was dealing with at home, but also so it would line up better so that we get to go the night before the Rams game and then 2 weeks from now again on Wednesday leading into the 49ers game. And so if you're not familiar with the Seahawks Syndicate, that's myself, Bryce Coots of the Hawks Eye, Brandon Kane of the Hawks Nest, and Mookie Alexander, managing editor of Field Goals. That is our roundtable. And so we'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow on the eve of the game, so do not miss that. Meanwhile, at least the three of us, Mookie may not be able to attend. Some of that may depend on how deep the Seahawks go in the playoffs, but there may be another conflict for him as well. But Brandon, Bryce, and I have all been approved for our credentials again to the Senior Bowl, and so we plan on heading down there for the entire week to cover all of the practices, get interviews with players, and then the game itself. Seahawks only have 4 draft picks right now, first, second, third, and a sixth, but still worth looking into this draft class. And I've been saying this, and I'll say it a whole bunch more between now and the last week in January. Don't listen to what anyone says about how bad this draft class is. Keep it in perspective. Take it within context. Yes, there are better draft classes some years than others. There is never a bad draft class or a class not worth pursuing. It's all about your scouting process, your eye, your needs, your coaching staff, and fit. So just throw everything. I don't want anyone coming to me over the next 4 months and saying it's not even worth it because it's a bad class. Not the case. You can find gems in every single class. You can find players that fit. You can find players to contribute. And I would argue the Seahawks don't need to find stars in this draft, just a couple of guys that can play some key roles. We don't even know what those roles are yet. And that's another thing I'll be talking about a lot over the next 4 months because free agency happens first. Trades happen first. Moves happen first. Veterans change teams before the draft. We don't know as we sit here today what that's going to look like. But one of the things you'll see down in the description, as well as all the other ways that you can help support me as a full-time independent content creator, is a specific link if you would like to contribute directly to travel expenses of going down and covering the Senior Bowl, as many of you did last year. Much appreciated. That is available down in the description as well. Let me share a couple of things that kind of stood out to me over the last 24 hours, and then we'll just jump right into some of your questions and comments. I thought this was kind of a cool tweet today from Pro Football Focus, who we all love to love and we all love to hate, right? Also, by the way, let me stick this up here. This QR code right here will take you to for the Senior Bowl as well. Here's what PFF said. Deceiving score. Seattle's narrow win last week looked shaky on paper, but the Seahawks dominated yardage and defense. Poor third down luck and red zone stalls kept points off the board. Not bad play. Now, I do have one issue with this. I don't ever like using the word luck when it comes to the NFL. Ball bounces funny sometimes. Sometimes a call doesn't go your way. I don't think that there is ever luck involved in a football game. If a certain play near the end of a game seems unlucky to you and it impacts the outcome, I get that. But there were 100 other opportunities throughout the game before that to make that play irrelevant or to change the course of history so that that play never happened. So I don't like PFF using the word luck. That is odd to me. But I do think their overall point makes sense. There's a lot of real negative reaction to the game Sunday. There's a lot of woe is me. There's a lot of the sky is falling. I'm hearing a lot of really extreme declarative statements. This team can't do that or this. It's not the way I look at football. It's not the way I view this team. This is a hard league to win in. It's a hard league to win consistently in. And when you look back over the history, the entire history, and you pick whichever team you want, pick some of the best teams ever to play, the dynasty teams, you're going to find ugly wins. You're going to find sloppy games where it didn't all come together. right? My baseball analogy I always use is the starting pitcher doesn't always have his best stuff, but the great ones learn how to win without their best stuff. And this is really the first opportunity this year for the Seahawks, that the Seahawks were able to show us they can win that way against a good team. They've won some games against lesser teams when they haven't been at their best. They've blown out some lesser teams when they haven't been at their best. And so I think this is really, really solid perspective on what we saw Sunday. I've heard some people have said to me this week, oh man, I can't believe that, 44-year-old Phillip Rivers getting off the couch after 5 years away was able to almost beat you. He wasn't. He wasn't. He averaged 4.4 yards per attempt. He threw for 120 yards. If the Seahawks offense had taken care of business and been more effective in the red zone and on third downs, again, PFF, that's not luck, then this game isn't that close. But thank goodness for Jason Myers, who's having a career year. And I'll remind some of you thought that we should cut him in the preseason. I'll just remind some of you of that. But also, hats off to Sam Darnold for getting it done when he needed to. End of the half, end of the game. Almost very, very identical situation to what happened at the end of the Rams game, except they were able to gain 6 more yards and make it more of a makeable field goal for Jason Myers. I looked at the game. I take the positives away. Yeah, I was frustrated by the offense too, and there's some issues there we're going to talk about tonight. Some of those issues aren't going to be able to be fixed until the offseason. But I'll say it again. I've been saying it, and I'll continue to say it. This team can win the Super Bowl. And I'm not the only one that thinks so. You look at Vegas, you look at projections, you look at Super Bowl odds out there. The Seahawks are, if they're not third, they're fourth in odds to win the Super Bowl among most of the big betting sites and sports books out there. Because it's not so much about how good you think they are or aren't, or their opponent is or isn't. It's about how you show up and play that day. And so you look at ceiling. You look at what can a team's best be? On their best day, can they beat anybody? Absolutely. There's only about 5 or 6 teams in the league, I think, this year that you can say that about. And that's an episode that I'm going to get into next week during sort of the mini bye. We'll do a whole episode where we talk about who are the teams that on their best day can win the Super Bowl. And we'll try to really narrow that down. I think a good example of this, the Denver Broncos lead the NFL in wins. They have won a lot of close games. They have won a lot of ugly games on offense where it wasn't working and they had to tough it out. And their defense let them hang around, and then Bo Nix makes a couple of plays late. And yet, most of the sports books I look at have them second in Super Bowl odds right now. It's not about floor this time of year. It's about ceiling. How good can you be? That's how I feel going into this thing. Here's what the playoff picture looks like as we sit here today. This is based on current standings, not projection. Of course, the Rams would have the number 1 seed in the NFC and the bye. The Seahawks would have the 5 seed. They'd go on the road to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you watched my show from earlier today with Jeff Simmons of Real Hawk Talk, he talked about how advantageous of a trip that would be. If that's what the Seahawks have to do, like, sign me up for that. That defense, not good in Tampa. And might be a little more forgiving to a young Seahawks offense still trying to find their way. And that offense hasn't been as good as they were week 5 since then. Baker hasn't been as good. There's some issues down there. And then you wouldn't have to worry about weather, right? Beat the hell out of traveling to Chicago, for instance, in January, or Philadelphia. Like, those are your other options, right? Green Bay, potentially. Sign me up for Tampa if it were to go that way. Now, let's go over some of the scenarios here. The Seahawks can clinch a couple things on Thursday. They can clinch a playoff berth by just winning on Thursday because it's against the Rams. That doesn't mean they only need to win one more game, but if they beat the Rams Thursday, they're in. If they lose Thursday and the Lions lose this weekend, they would also be in. So that's to clinch a playoff spot. To clinch the NFC West, this is where Thursday night really matters. The cleanest path for them to win the division is to beat the Rams on Thursday and then win one more game after that. to likely seal the division. Some other crazy things could happen, but that's the cleanest path. If they win Thursday, then all they have to do is win one more. The Rams have to lose one more. If you look at their schedule, not likely. And they clinch the NFC West. For the number 1 seed, it's pretty cut and dry. They just have to win out. Just. Win 3 straight, and they clinch the number 1 seed. So this is what it would look like. I did this on ESPN's Playoff Predictor, where you can play around with the results. If every team with a better record than their opponent wins the rest of the way, if chalk wins out for the next 3 weeks, and the Seahawks beat the Rams on Thursday, and the Rams even win their final 2, this is how it looks. The Seahawks are the number 1 seed. They would have the bye and home field advantage throughout. There is so much on the line here. It's such a massive game on Thursday. There's some never before of 2 teams with 11 wins ever met on Thursday Night Football. We're talking about the top 2 teams in DVOA this year, and it's not even close. Look at that. Seattle at 43.5% total DVOA. The Rams at 43.3%. Drops all the way down to 28.9% for the Lions at number 3. Now, what does this mean? If you're new to DVOA, it's basically a way of analyzing and assessing strength to each team based on every single play and the success of that play. It's kind of all the best parts of success rate and EPA and all that sort of rolled into one. And traditionally, once we get later in the season, this has been one of the best predictors ever of teams that will make deep playoff runs and win Super Bowls. During the Seahawks run from 13 to 15, and I think maybe even into 16, they were number 1 in DVOA all 3 of those years through that dominant run. Let me put it in perspective for you a little bit. This is a ranking of DVOA outcomes historically. The 2007 New England Patriots that finished the season 14-0 are through 14 games. I'm sorry. So this is apples to apples. You can see here that New England team in 2007 was 14-0 at this point. Their DVOA was 54.4%. That's the best ever through 14 games. Look at this. The Seahawks are 5th and the Rams are 6th right now, all time. The 5th and 6th best DVOA marks through 14 games ever. That's how massive this matchup is on Thursday night. Thank goodness it got scheduled for that night. This is the New York Times playoff projections. Now, that first column is to make the playoffs. Rams have already clinched. Seahawks and Niners are essentially locks to get in. They're both at 99%. Seahawks slightly more than 99%. That second column is to win the division. Of course, you have the Rams right now at 57%, the Seahawks 30%. That would certainly flip on its head if the Seahawks were to win Thursday. And then first round bye, the Rams at 53%, the Seahawks at 29%. The 49ers still with an opportunity there at 13%. In fact, this is funny. The 49er fans should be rooting for the Seahawks on Thursday, because if the Seahawks beat the Rams, because the 49ers and Seahawks play in that Week 18, and then the 49ers win out, they would win the division and get a shot at the 1 seed if everything falls their way. So thought that was interesting. And then one other thing to show you before we get to your questions and all that is somebody posted this today. East Coast Rams podcast at East Coast Rams. Looks like it's going to be a wet field on Thursday night. And the reason I saw this is a Rams fan that we follow each other on Twitter reposted this and said, oh, this is good for the Rams because Seahawks running game is putrid right now. So this looks bad. If you look at this graphic, right? 100% chance of rain, 100% chance of rain, 95% chance of rain on Thursday. Seattle is currently in the grips of the 3rd wave of the atmospheric river. They caught a break on Sunday for that Colts game. It was supposed to have started then, but then it kind of got pushed back. But let's look a little closer. Like we always do in sports. This is what I tell you guys all the time. If there's a trade or there's an interesting move or a hiring or whatever, and there's the overreaction without digging deeper. So the first thing I thought was, well, if it goes from 100% today and Wednesday down to 95% on Thursday, maybe it's starting to taper off then. Let's look at the hourly forecast. This is Thursday, and it only went up to 5 o'clock because it only goes 48 hours out. Look at that. It clears up early Thursday morning, and you can see there, sunshine, 1% chance of rain, goes up to 10% chance of rain at 4 o'clock leading into the game, but still partly sunny. I don't think extreme weather is going to be an issue on Sunday. So I think that's good, right? All right, you guys, what is up? Let's see what we got going here. Let me go back and see if I missed anything of note. Dogzilla, what's up? Osiris, how you doing? X-Wing in the house, as always. Can always rely on those guys. Those are my outstanding. Those are the, if you're a teacher and you have the certain of your students, just you don't have to worry about attendance. Those are my guys there, like almost always here. More John McGrath. Good to see you, buddy. John's excited for the rivalry uniforms. I am too. I know that there was massive blowback when they were first released, and I understand why. We've talked about this a lot, or we did when they came out. With the design they have on the shoulders, it does look very Oregon Ducks-like. It looks like one of their designs where they have the wing design on the shoulders. So I get that. But to me, it looks like sort of a modern day version of the wolf grays, except it's a little darker gray, which I like. I wasn't a fan of the wolf grays. I know a lot of you liked them. I just thought it looked like they washed the whites improperly and they came out a little off-white. I just didn't think it was extreme enough. But also the helmets and the numbers and that iridescent kind of color changing, those helmets I think are fantastic. And I've heard these uniforms look better in person. And I think under the lights and everything else on Thursday night, that's going to be interesting to watch. All right. John says the key to beating the Rams will be to stop their running backs. Both Williams and Corum had over 70 yards each against the Lions and combined for 3 touchdowns. In the last 3 weeks, the Seahawks have, or in the last 2 weeks, they have stopped 2 of the best running backs in the league, if not arguably the 2 best running backs in the league, in Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Taylor. It looked like Taylor might break that streak the Seahawks have. I think it's 26 games, something like that, of not allowing a 100-yard rusher because he had some big runs on that first drive, and he kind of looked like there was some space to run early. Seahawks obviously made some adjustments and shut it down after that, held Taylor to under 90 yards. Now, it helped that after the first few drives, I think they felt pretty good about the fact, certainly in the second half, that Phillip Rivers wasn't going to be able to do any damage downfield on them, so they were able to adjust and get a little more aggressive playing the run. Not the case with the Rams. You have Matt Stafford, you have Puka Nacua, you have that passing game to complement the running game. And what is Sean McVay known for? You don't know what's coming based on down distance, formation, motion. You don't know what's coming. Everything looks the same. A little bit different. And I think they are, if it's possible for that offense to get more dangerous, they're becoming even more dangerous because Blake Corum is finally contributing. They kind of kept him under wraps last year. And then even early this year, we thought it might be more of a timeshare, more of a tandem. It wasn't. Well, it's starting to look that way now. Blake Corum's starting to look like the guy we thought he was going to be coming out of Michigan. Now, the big question Thursday for them is going to be Devontae Adams. He hurt his hamstring late in that game, same hamstring that caused him to miss time earlier this season. Immediately after the game, there were reports that it does not look good for him. And then since then, we've heard, well, it's week to week. It's an important game. It's going to go right up to game time. He's going to try and make a go of it. Here's my take on that. Of course they're saying that because you want the Seahawks to believe he's going to play Thursday. But based on the initial reactions that we got on Sunday from some of the connected insider reports, from some of the online, the orthopedic surgeons and stuff that do this thing for a living, and they look at video and they make predictions online based on their educated eye. I don't think he's going to play on Thursday, but they're not going to tell us that. And so we won't know until about an hour before the game when the actives and inactives are announced. I know it's an important game, and you can make the argument that He should play, but they're going to have a lot of important games after that too, potentially deep into the playoffs. And let's face it, you guys, let's be honest. That team right now is deserving of the attention that they're getting for being the favorite right now to go to the Super Bowl. They are. They just are. They're the more complete team. Seahawks have the better defense overall, but the Rams defense is good. The Rams have the better offense, much more accomplished. There's much more continuity there. They brought basically everybody back intact and then added Devontae Adams, Terrence Ferguson to it. And now you're seeing them kind of take another step with a healthy Matt Stafford. So I don't think he's going to play on Thursday. And I know you've heard me say a lot, if you've been following me or watching me for any length of time, that I hate injuries and I wish there weren't any. I think I said a couple weeks ago, if a genie granted me 3 wishes, I think one of them would be no more injuries ever in the NFL. I want to see teams play at full strength against everyone else at full strength. This game is so historically important for the Seahawks in the sense that they at some point need to get over this hump. It's not going to break my heart if Devontae Adams doesn't play on Thursday. I'm not rooting for or against it. I'm just saying I'll take any advantage I can get right now. It's that important. All right, so we're going to get into some talk tonight about Klint Kubiak. I put him on the thumbnail. I was hoping to have Bryce Coots on the show today, but he had a conflict. He had an end-of-the-year awards banquet with his football, his players, his kids. And I know this, and I'm sure Bryce won't mind me sharing this with you. He texted me after the game on Sunday and said, look, I'm so angry at Kubiak right now, I can't even do a reaction show tonight. I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow. I've had games like that. I've had to wait sometimes. But here's where I'm at on Kubiak. We continue, and when I say we, I mean fans, reporters, analysts, anyone in the social media world that talks about this kind of stuff, reacts to this stuff. We're always in such a rush to make, I'll use this term again, declarative statements. Black or white, yay or nay. It's not. It's never that. Players develop, and so do coaches. Am I frustrated with Klint Kubiak sometimes? Yeah. Do I have doubts that he'll ever be an elite play caller on the level of McVay and Shanahan? I'm reading that book, The Why Is Everything, right now, that kind of traces that lineage back to Kyle Shanahan or to Mike Shanahan. And you get the feeling pretty quickly after diving into that book by Michael Silver that those guys are on a different level. And I don't think Klint Kubiak's brain works at their level, where they're like 3 or 4 chess moves ahead of everybody. I think Clint understands the scheme really well. I think he has a feel for the game, but I don't think he's that next level. In fact, I think he's kind of stuck in that zone where he sometimes outthinks himself and overthinks things. I think it's contributing to some of the slow starts that we've had lately and some of the slow starts we had at the beginning of the season until we went on that run where we were getting off to faster starts. I think week 1 against the Niners, and I think this Sunday was another example of it, where it felt like he was, instead of just trying to do what they thought they could do well, they tried to anticipate what the Colts and Niners were going to do to them on defense and zag because they were expecting them to zig, if that makes sense. I think he's at his best when he just rips plays off the play sheet that he thinks will work based on the game plan and how guys are going on the field. He seems to be better. The question was when they were getting off to those fast starts and scoring early, the second halves weren't looking as good. Now it's that script has flipped. I would much rather have it be if I had one to choose, he's shown me that he can make adjustments. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. Are there things I wish he would do differently and do better? Absolutely. I wish he would move Sam Darnold more often, earlier in games when he can see that there's going to be pressure. I wish he would design some plays to get Sam out on the move and get him maybe some designed runs. I wish he would encourage Sam to be more willing to run. I wish he would get the running backs involved in the passing game to a much greater extent, and some of the tight ends as well. But I think generally he's a good coordinator, maybe even a very good coordinator, and he's a solid play caller. But he has so much more room to grow, and that happens. Coaches get better. What has his experience been? A season in Minnesota, a season in New Orleans, a half season in Denver in what was a fully dysfunctional season with Russ and everything else, and Hackett. And they changed play callers like 3 times. And then Minnesota, the whole staff with Mike Zimmer got fired. New Orleans, the whole staff got fired. So he's never had a chance to call plays for a good, contending, healthy, functional team. And by healthy, I don't mean physically healthy. I mean organizationally healthy. And he's never had a chance to do it for more than that 1 year. What we've seen from this defense this year, where last year we saw some ups and downs, we saw it get better as the year went along. And then guess what? Year 2 in the system, everybody understands the playbook more. They understand the calls better. Mike can get deeper into his bag, open the playbook more. They're able to react instead of think, and all that continuity. 9 players who played over 300 snaps last year, 15 players who started a game. So that defense was able to hit the ground running out of the gate and be good from week 1. There's good. Look at the roster. We're going to do breakdown shows on this here soon. On what the roster looks like for 2026. There's going to be a lot of continuity. There's going to be a lot of key players back. You're maybe only switching out 1 to 2 starters, probably. I would expect a step forward in year 2. And so try not to make those kinds of judgments that he's either terrible or great, because it kind of went from, oh my God, we might lose him as a head coach, he's doing so well, to someone told me today, like, I hope somebody hires him. Like, we're there again already? As if an unproven, another new coordinator would be better, having to teach everybody another new scheme? No. I think Clint Kubiak has a chance to be a very, very good play caller. The last thing I'll say on this issue is this. Go through the standings, list of teams, whatever, and just on your own, a little homework assignment for you, and go through and identify the play callers on offense and just make a little check mark or a little note to yourself of the ones that you consider to be great play callers. Right off the top of my head right now, without looking at a list of teams, I would say that it's less than 10. It might be 5 or 6 or 7, and most of them are head coaches. So you're not going to get one of them. And then if there's a guy out there that you think is a great play caller, an elite OC that's not a head coach, like a Josh McDaniels, you're not going to get him either. So you're going to be what? Giving the job to Andrew Janocko or Justin Outen and hoping that they're better when they've never done it before, or hiring some other quarterback coach off another team, or an OC that's under a head coach who calls plays, and give him a shot to do it full time, but he's never done it before. Sorry. I believe in Clint Kubiak's upside and his trajectory, and I think they need to improve a couple of spots talent-wise, and then have these guys play together again. I think this offense is going to be a lot better next year. In the meantime, they're capable any given week of putting out a good performance, and even with this offense, as flawed as it is at times, can win the Super Bowl. Going to stick to that. Going to stick to that. Yeah, John says Puka Nacua had 181 yards, but no points against the Lions. I think we can contain him too. He's a lot, well, I was going to use the word easy. He's never easy to contain. He's easier if Davante Adams isn't out there. Seahawks were able to almost eliminate Davante Adams in the Week 11 meeting. He had 1 catch for 1 yard. It was a touchdown, but that was it. It wasn't even like he was in the game at all. So it's going to be those tight ends. Maybe we'll see some more of that 13 personnel that McVay's been leaning so heavily into this year. That Colby Parkinson's been scoring touchdowns lately. Their first round pick, Terrence Ferguson, is beginning more snaps. Those guys could be in play. John asked the same question. Why don't we throw to our running backs more? All the other top teams utilize their running backs as pass catchers way more than we ever do, and to great advantage. We need to start doing that when they struggle to run. I don't know. It's not a Kubiak thing. It's not a blind spot. Alvin Kamara caught like 60 balls last year. He got more balls last year than all the running backs on the roster have combined this year for Seattle. And I don't even think they're on pace to have as many catches combined as Kamara had last year. So he's able to do it. He's willing to do it. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because he wants to get the ball to JSN. He wants to get the ball to Rashid Shaheed, who's coming on the last couple of weeks. You can see that chemistry building with he and Sam, that he's just not calling those. I thought we saw some signs against the Vikings in that game and the Falcons game as well, where they were kind of getting Barner and the running backs involved a little bit more in the short passing game. It looked intentional to me. Some of it also might be this, John, that this offensive line, as improved as it is, and you cannot understate how much better it is than it's been in the last 10 years. If anyone is going to try to argue with me that it's not, then they just don't remember how bad it was, and they need to go back and remind themselves. But it's still flawed, and it still can't just leave those tackles on an island, can't just leave 5 blocking 6. They're not that good. And so it seems like one of the things they do to help is the running backs stay in a little bit longer than they would like at times to help out, make sure there isn't a free rusher, maybe chip a little bit so they're getting out later into their hot routes. That's what I'm seeing. But why isn't it designed? I don't know what it is, John, and the rest of you, about why the Seahawks are cursed when it comes to the screen pass. Maybe it was because we enjoyed so many great years with John L. Williams and Ricky Waters and a guy like Holmgren who could design those screen passes that we see seemingly every other team run, especially against us. Although this defense is much, much better at defending the screen than some of those later Pete Carroll defenses, so it's not as painful. But, where the design screens where they let a couple rushers come, they make it look like a pass, they pull a couple of linemen, they get it out to the running back, right? We see that all the time. Saw Cousins do a couple of those effectively in that comeback win for them on Sunday. I don't know. And I think it's something that needs to get fixed this offseason, and maybe it's as simple as taking one more step to improve that offensive line a little bit more, so that maybe they feel more comfortable calling those plays. I don't know, but I feel like it would be a massive, massive addition to this offense and a huge weapon and really take a lot of pressure off Sam Darnold. X-Wing asks, if we can get past the Rams in the playoffs, do you think we win it all? I think they're the best team in football right now. And so it would stand to reason that if we can beat them, we should be able to beat anybody. And I think that's a good question. I think if you're forcing me to pick yes or no, I would say yes. Because I think the power that they would gain in knowing that they finally slayed that dragon, whether they beat him Thursday or not. That's another thing we can talk about. I've been saying that. Thursday's not a must-win game. Watch the conversation I had with Jeff Simmons today. Go back and check that out if you haven't yet. We talk about this. They don't have to beat the Rams on Thursday. Sure, if they want the number 1 seed, they have to. I have never felt like this was the year where it's all or nothing, Super Bowl or bust. That's not where this team is. It's not where the roster is. This roster is built for long-term continuity and success. They don't have a ton of huge contract decisions this offseason. They have financial flexibility. Like, they're set up to go this way. This feels more like 2012 than it does 2013, even though they're on track to win as many games as that team did, if not more. And so that's why it'll be disappointing if they don't win Thursday. It'll be upsetting, but my attention will immediately shift to, okay, well, they're going to play them again. I do think they're going to play the Rams 3 times. Maybe it ends up being the 49ers 3 times. The same argument applies. That at some point that gorilla, you shed it from your back. I've mentioned this a couple of times, but I watched the Netflix series America's Team while I was back in Seattle, and the Philadelphia Eagles were that team for the Cowboys. They couldn't beat him, and Troy Aikman played terrible against him every time. And that was back when they had Reggie White, and they had oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the other guy's name that passed away. But they were a monster of a defense, and they couldn't get past him. When they finally did, it was like the breakthrough that they needed. And then they won the back-to-back Super Bowls and went on, dominated the 90s, pretty much. It feels like, whether it's the 49ers or the Rams, that in your scenario, if they get to the NFC Championship game and they're playing one of those teams and they beat them, I think they destroy whoever they end up playing in the Super Bowl, because it's just an affirmation of everything you've been working towards. And no matter what these players say, no matter how confident they seem, and they do, there's that little voice in your head in sports when you have that arch nemesis you just can't get past. There is that little bit of doubt. I think that haunted Sam a little bit in week 11. And that's why, even if they lose on Thursday, if he just plays a solid game without turning the ball over, without being the reason that they lose, I'll call that a victory. But also, if that happens, I think they win. So John says, I would trade all our picks in the upcoming draft and Mafe, Bradford, Bobo, and Morris for Max Crosby. That package is not going to get it done, first of all. Mafe is not under contract, so you can't trade him. I get what you're saying, though. As much as we've talked a lot on the show about how I think John Schneider will engage the Raiders again this offseason, and he will, they're in a lot more disadvantageous position now than they were at the trade deadline, because then they had Wolin and Mafe reportedly on the table, and those were players that I think if Pete was involved in this process at all, and at that time there was still some thought that he might survive the season, I don't think so now. It hasn't gone great since then. It's got even worse. It just keeps getting worse and worse by the week. That you had something to offer other than just draft picks. Well, now if you want to offer, 2 firsts, what else are you going to add to it? You'd have to offer so many picks. It gets a little dicey. I would be as aggressive as you can possibly be in still going after him. And I think there's a scenario, if they fire Pete and they make it clear that they're going to rebuild, I think Crosby asks out. I think he demands a trade. If they go, I don't know who they could hire that would be a big name that might kind of get people excited there, that they might be able to come in and win right away. I don't know who that would be, because that roster can't support it. That roster is not good enough. So I think they are going to tear it all down and make it look like a rebuild, in which case I think Crosby might do us a favor and say, hey, get me out of here. And if he gives them a list of teams that he'd like to play for, Seattle would be on it. Lou says, shouldn't we take care of this game before talking about beating the Rams in the playoffs? No, I think it's perfectly fine to speculate and look down the road and into the future. I don't like limiting my analysis. X-Wing says, can you imagine if we trade for Crosby and sign Hendrickson as a free agent? I can't imagine it, because that would be financially irresponsible. I think there's some other things that need to be done, and I don't think that would make a lot of sense. Are you cutting Nwosu to save some cap space? Are you not extending Derek Hall? That's a tough one for me. If you can't pry Crosby away from the Raiders, though, I think the Seahawks will be one of the teams in on Hendrickson. I think where he's at in his career, he'll be 32 next year, I think fits perfectly with the way the Seahawks like to do veteran contracts, like 3 years max. or 3 on paper, but it's really a 2, like we saw with DeMarcus Lawrence, like we saw with Cooper Kupp. And with some of their extensions, they like doing those shorter term deals where you get the money up front and then there's no big guarantees in year 2. I think that could really, really fit. And I think Hendrickson, when he's surveying, now he's free agent. It's different. He doesn't have to worry about Mike Brown being stingy and stubborn anymore. I think Seattle would be a team he would love to play for. Why would you not? And when people say, oh, he sucks against the run, no, he doesn't. It's not his strength. He's not Jadeveon Clowney as an edge player against the run, but he's not a liability there either. And he is such a great pass rusher. I have to wonder about health now. He just had surgery. That would have to, but maybe that'll bring his price down a little bit too. You never know. I'll give you you want to talk a little bit about offseason? I'll give you a sneaky name that I think they're going to sign this offseason. I think it'll be cheap, and I think it could have a Uchenna Nwosu type impact. Remember when they signed Nwosu, it was a pretty modest 2-year deal because he wasn't really a full-time player and he wasn't filling up the stat sheet. They got in early on him. They saw the upside, and they signed him kind of like they did with Michael Bennett, Cliff Averill. Like they saw what he could be, and boy, are they right about that. Watch for Arnold Ebiketie, the former Penn State player. He's playing for the Atlanta Falcons. He will be a free agent after this year. There was some talk that the Falcons might give up on him around the trade deadline. He was a guy that the Seahawks had a very high draft grade on, according to John Boyle, when they were in that draft. It was the year that they drafted Mafe. And the report from John usually does that sort of behind the curtain, kind of insiders, war room piece a couple days after the draft. And we get little tidbits from there. And one of the things we got from that year was they had Ebiketie very high on their board. And I think if I remember right, they might have even had a first-round grade on him. But the Falcons moved up to one spot in front of Seattle to take Ebiketie, so they pivoted, the Seahawks did, and took Mafe instead. Mafe's not going to be re-signed. Ebiketie's been not a bust. He played meaningful snaps against the Seahawks just a couple weeks ago, had a couple pressures, but he hasn't fulfilled his second-round promise. He hasn't been what they were hoping he would be, very, very similarly to what has happened here with Boye Mafe. I could see him being kind of a classic John Schneider move to get a guy that they liked in the draft process and try and get some upside out of him. I think that might be really interesting. Let's see. John says, I'd rather trade for Crosby and sign a veteran center or right guard in free agency, to be honest. Like I said earlier, I'm with you. I think, first of all, if the Ravens are dumb enough to let him get to free agency, you do whatever you can to sign Tyler Linderbaum. He's one of the best centers in the league. He's 26 years old. I know he's had some injuries. Maybe that'll keep his cost down a little bit, but he's a guy that they did not pick up his 5th-year option, in part because he played some guard, and so that allowed him to qualify when it comes to the franchise tag and the 5th-year option and all that the guard number is a little higher than the center number. So he was able to take advantage of that. But he's a difference maker. And if you can get him, then I think it gives you a whole bunch of other options at right guard. You could go with Sundell, or if you want someone a little more stout, you could probably even live. If you plug Tyler Linderbaum in this offensive line right now, with the way Anthony Bradford's playing at right guard the last few weeks, like you're elevating the play of that line as a whole. That's how good Linderbaum is, both in the pass and run game, and he would fit this scheme. So I think you do whatever you can to sign him. If you can't, I can live with Sundell as a starting center next year. It's a weak offensive line draft class. This line is already young enough. It's the youngest in the league. It averages 24 years of age. I'm with you, John. Get a vet. Trade for Cesar Ruiz, which they tried to do at the trade deadline, if you can. It's a pretty reasonable contract. He knows the scheme. Played for Kubiak last year. He's not an all-pro, but he's a good, solid veteran. Or sign a guy like him in free agency. I'm tired of adding rookies to this line. It's not what it needs next year. It's not that kind of draft class. You're not going to get a guy at 28, 29, or 30 that's going to have the impact next year that Gray Zabel had this year. And even that, even as good as Zabel is, you see the development curve that's still out there for him. He still has some misses, and there's still some growth to be done there. He's not a perfect player by any means. I don't want to add another unproven rookie to that mix as a starter next year. Get a veteran. Get someone who's solid. Raise the floor of the line. In doing so, you also raise the ceiling. But let's focus on that. Let's get a guy in here who can slide in nice and easy. He's comfortable with the scheme. He's proven. Doesn't have to be a superstar. A good, solid veteran. If you can't get Linderbaum. If you can get Linderbaum, Bryce Cable might be the starting right guard next year. Like, the athletic profile's outstanding. And when he's gotten snaps, very small sample size, you could see the upside. You could see it. And if you plug a guy like Linderbaum in there, put him between Linderbaum and Lucas, and you have Cross and Zabel on the other side, like, that might work too. That might work too. I think this is an aspect of Sunday's game that it's not getting talked about, but it's not getting talked about much. They did lean into this quite a bit on the broadcast, I thought. Yeah, I think that Colts team played a lot harder, and especially on offense and that offensive line, because Phillip Rivers was out there. They were inspired by him. He's a guy that lifts everybody up when he jumps in the locker room. Like, he's so positive, and just he picks guys up around him. I think if they run out there with Riley Leonard, the second something goes badly on offense, I think it could have sort of snowballed like the Minnesota game did. And so I think that was a huge aspect on Sunday. And maybe it was a big part of why they decided to go that route. They thought, hey, guys are going to play for this dude. Maybe might not have been the case if Anthony Richardson was ready to go, or if Riley Leonard, threw a pick early on. Main Street Paul, don't know if this was before or after I mentioned it, but let's see. I can throw this back up here again. This is the hourly forecast for Thursday. It's supposed to be pretty clear all day Thursday. Only went up until 5 o'clock because it only goes out 48 hours. You can see it ticks up a little bit, 10% chance of rain in the 4 o'clock hour, but partly sunny. It's not going to be, it looks like the atmospheric river situation, the Pineapple Express they're dealing with there in the Pacific Northwest, is going to taper off by Wednesday. So I don't think rain's going to be an issue. It doesn't sound like. Main Street Paul also says, I believe most of the Seahawk fans will be selling tickets to LA Rams opponents because of the flooding of the roads. Two things. It's going to subside by then. We just showed it, right? And so, yeah, maybe some people in the outskirts might not be able to get around. It's not going to impact the city center. But also, judging by, I just looked at Ticketmaster before I came on with y'all, and the cheapest ticket available to get in the building's $211. That is not the case when we have games where people are willing to sell their tickets. Usually 2 days out from a game, even an important game, over the last 7 or 8 years, you can get tickets for $60, $70. 211 is about as high as you'll see 48 hours out from a game. I think the diehards are holding on to their tickets, and the ones that aren't season ticket holders are going to snap those up. If anything, I think it would give LA Rams fans significant pause before booking expensive plane flight during the Christmas season and buying expensive ticket to fly up here knowing that they might have to be dealing with flood situation. I think it would scare people from Los Angeles off a little bit more than it would scare off people from Seattle. Some of these questions I have already addressed. Brian Myers has an interesting name. He says, if Walker leaves, I want Breece Hall. My only concern with Hall is he hasn't been a good soldier in New York. He's been grumpy, cranky, bitching about playing time, touches. That doesn't seem like a Seahawk to me. there are some good running backs in this draft. They could go that route. And then I haven't really looked at the free agent class. I don't think there's a lot out there. Tyler Algier, I know, is a free agent. They could try to trade for Devon Achane or Devon Achane. I know Rob Staten wrote about that yesterday. But with only 4 picks in this draft, I don't know. If they think it's a weaker draft, you can get Achane for a second, which reportedly is what he was being offered for at the trade deadline. Well, if that's what they wanted at the deadline, then you would think this offseason that a third should get it done because you're getting a half less season of him, and he's 1 year, he's closer, he's a year away from free agency. If you can get Devon Achane for a third, Rob makes a really good case that he's a perfect fit for this offense. They need someone more decisive, someone that can get into a crease and doesn't have to see a huge hole. And Jeff and I talked quite a bit about this today. Again, go watch that. And it just seems like Walker's in his head. He's thinking too much. He's not reacting. And you can see the progression of it. They've been coaching him hard. They've been trying to rewire him. But it's almost at the point now where sometimes he gets the ball and he pauses, almost similar to what Le'Veon Bell used to be like, where he was so patient at the line of scrimmage. It was almost uncomfortable to watch. Like, start running, dude. You see him do that sometimes, but just the indecisiveness, those holes aren't there very quick. In the zone scheme, that's often the case. What's there, like, you have to anticipate too. You kind of have to, as a running back, you have to be looking to the second level and sort of feel the creases. And I don't feel like he's there, and they might have decided that he's not going to get there. And that maybe the answer to this running game isn't so much make bigger holes, because that's not realistic. But let's get a guy that can do a little bit more with less. Raise the floor of the running back position. Ken Walker's ceiling is still as high as it ever was, but the floor is negative runs because he's so indecisive. And if it closes down on him, it's like that. Let me do this real quick before I get to the rest of y'all's questions. If you have any loved ones this December that love eating beef, this is a great gift idea for you. Omaha Steaks has been selling USDA certified steaks for over 100 years. Family-run business. My family's been eating these steaks since I was a kid. They're delivered to your door, individually packed in a cold case, any cut you can imagine. They also have pork and chicken and even desserts and burgers. And right now, site-wide, they're going to give you great discounts. Plus, when you go to checkout, they're going to give you an additional $35 off for using the promo code FOREVER. So go to omahasteaks.com, enter in that promo code FOREVER. They're going to give you discounts site-wide plus $35 off at checkout. At omahasteaks.com, terms do apply. And then if you haven't checked out the Sleeper app yet as well, that deal's still going on. You can still take advantage of it. If you want to sign up today and play some of their games of skill, they're going to give you $20 right off the top. No deposit required. But if you do make a deposit, or you want to anyway, they're going to match that first one up to $100, 100%. Again, using the promo code FOREVER at the Sleeper app. It's not just games of skill. Terms and conditions do apply to that. Legal in 26 states at the moment. But there's a lot of other stuff that you can do anywhere, no matter where you are. You can follow along games in real time with the best play-by-play real-time tracking of any app out there. They cover all the sports. You can pick games. You can get into fantasy. All of that. Check out the Sleeper app today. All right, let's get back to this. Hold on. Where are we at? That's what I wanted. Okay. Thanks for being here, guys. Appreciate it. Just kind of decided to do this tonight because I didn't do any content for the last 5 days. So even though I did a show today, I haven't had a chance to hang out with you guys and didn't get a chance to properly react to the Colts game, which by the way, kind of a funny story, a little bit of a pain in the ass. But we were flying back during the game, and so Wi-Fi was fantastic. I was able to watch the whole first half in high def. We landed literally at halftime, and so then as we're working our way through the airport in Columbus, I'm trying to watch it on my phone and whatever. We get back to our car. It's out in an exposed lot. It's 2 degrees in Columbus, and one of my tires is completely flat, like sitting on the rim. Fuck. Like, am I going to have to change a tire, put on the donuts, with, frozen hands and ice and snow and packed snow everywhere. Thankfully, made the right choice. There was a gas station like a mile away. We were able to limp there slowly. And it was a slow enough leak that it took air. So I was able to fill it all the way up. And we were able to drive the 3 hours back to West Virginia. Had to stop a couple times and top it off. I could see, I have a newer car. And so it's got shows you what the tire pressure is in each tire. I could see it just slowly going down. Like every 10 minutes, it went down like 1 PSI. And I'd let it get to like 25. And then I'd pull over and fill it up. But so it was a long travel day on Sunday. So I was going to do a show Monday. But that's the one day this week that my lady and I got a chance here at home, back home, put up the Christmas tree, hang out together. She had to go back to work tonight. So that's why I was offline. Laid my dad to rest on Friday at Tahoma Cemetery in Kent. A gorgeous military service there, the 3-gun salute and everything. He was a former Marine, fought in the Korean War. It was a beautiful experience. Saw some family members that I didn't think were going to be there. Some people we've lost touch with that showed up for Dad. Thought that was amazing. Got to catch up with some family members that I hadn't seen in literally 20 years. Some aunts and uncles and sister of mine that I just haven't seen much of over the last 20 years. So that was cool. So thank you for your patience. Thank you while I was away. But just thought, you know what? I got nothing else to do tonight. I'm going to go live and hang out with my peeps. So thanks for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah, John says, I know people don't like the jerseys much, the rivalry jerseys tomorrow, but man, do those helmets look badass. They really do. Those helmets, I'm telling you, I kind of wish it was a day game. Like those things in the sun would be pretty spectacular. They'll probably look pretty good at night too with those LED lights on them. Let's see. Main Street Paul says, if we win the Super Bowl, I'm going to be going to Disneyland to see Cavalcade because this year is at Disneyland. 2027 will be at Disney World since Super Bowl is on the East Coast. Oh, I got it. You're thinking ahead. Yeah, Super Bowl in Santa Clara this year. That be a pretty easy drive down from Seattle. Well, I wouldn't say easy in January. You have to get over what is that, Grants Pass down there in South Oregon. That can be tough sometimes. X-Wing Dispatch, Mrs. X-Wing, a.k.a. How you doing? Thanks for being here. John McGrath replying directly to John. Hey, that last win might have been ugly, but one step closer to the island of you, Rookie, and Bryce being right. 13-4 island, right? Do you guys still struggle sometimes doing the math? I still want to say like 13 and what? And how many? I'm still not used to 17 games. And then just when we get used to 17 games, they're going to add the 18th game, right? Yeah, here it is. Mookie, not Rookie. Damn autocorrect. John says 13-4 islands. Really nice, Dan. No rain here. I like that. I like it. John says, I hope that cramped up back can at least slow Puka down a bit. I did see that today on my fantasy app. I saw that he was listed as questionable. He'll play. Let's see. Yeah. John says, I just hope we actually have a run game because if we stink it up like we did against the Colts and we won't beat the Rams, it doesn't have to go great. Just a decent will be enough. I'm with you because the chances of holding Matt Stafford down, again, probably not great. In fact, let me find, there was a really cool graphic that I saw right before. Oh, here it is. Check this out. This is Matt Stafford this year and how he's done against every team. And look at that. His second worst yardage total was week 6 when he threw for 181 yards against the Ravens, 130 against the Seahawks in week 11. And then you look at, 389 against the 49ers, 375 against the Colts, 368 this week against the Lions, 298 against the Titans. It just goes on and on. In his 2 games against San Francisco and that defense, even with all their injuries, still Robert Saleh, and they've still, played at a pretty high level, 280 and 389. So you're probably going to have to figure out a way to beat the Rams where Stafford's going to get his 250 to 260 yards. And running the football is the best way to do that. The thing that we forget about, I think some people do when they talk about that first meeting, isn't just the 4 interceptions, but it was the result of the interceptions. Weren't they down 17-0? And then crawled them their way all the way back? Was it 17-0? That's... If they can just hang with them throughout the game, because I'm quite sure this one's going to go down to the last 5-6 minutes. Hang with them, whether it's a 18-16 game like they just played against the Colts with a lot of field goals, or, the first game against the Rams was 21-19, right? If it's that kind of game, or if it's like the Tampa Bay game, which I don't think it'll be like, but if it's more of a shootout type game, I think it's going to come right down to a team having a chance to win it with the ball in their hands at the end. I hope I'm wrong. I do sense that because this would be such a breakthrough opportunity for this team, and they know this is Goliath, and we're David. We're not really David because we're right there with Goliath. So that's a terrible analogy, but that's the dragon we have to slay. That if things start going well early, and maybe they get a blocked kick, they go on a nice touchdown drive. The Seahawks are up a couple of scores early. I think they might have a chance to really pour it on, because then it's like that wave of confidence and belief just sort of tears through your sideline. I could see it being that type of game that might snowball just a little bit. That'd be hard to do against this Rams team, though, because that offense, they can beat you so many ways. They can get up on you early like they did against us and then just pound the football down your throat, even at 3.5 yards a carry, even though the Seahawks don't give up explosives on the ground. They can control the clock that way. Or, if you're up 2 scores, you can never count them out because Stafford can just sling it all around the yard. I'm excited to see what kind of game plan Mike McDonald has for them this time. Obviously, there's going to be some wrinkles. He's going to approach it differently than he did week 11. It's not going to show them the exact same looks. But we also have everybody healthy, which was not the case week 11. We were still missing. Can I even go back and look at that? Yeah, I can. Hang on one second. Let's do that. Shall we? Let's go back to that first Rams game, because now I can't even remember who was missing on defense. That was Ernest Jones' first game back, so he wasn't 100% healthy, right? He was playing on that knee that if it was any other opponent, he might not have played on that week because he missed the next week, right? So he's fully healthy. Julian Love did not play in that game. He is back. Let's see, Murphy, Williams, Witherspoon, Emenwari, Nwosu. So that was really it. Love didn't play in that game, and Jones was not 100%. And now Emenwari has played 4 games since then, and that might not sound like a lot, but you've seen over the last 3 weeks especially the plays that he's making on a week-in, week-out basis. You can argue he's a different player than the one that they saw the first time around, and they'll be able to do some things with him that they might see on tape, but they haven't faced. It's going to be a little bit different defense. Meanwhile, Carnell Lake out for the Rams, and that secondary that played so well against the Seahawks in week 11 and had been changing some people's minds. I came on the show and said, hey, you can't say they have a weak secondary anymore. Well, that secondary has struggled at times since then. Manuel Forbes has been picked on a little bit. He did not have a good game in that Carolina loss. Carnell Lake is out. Braden Fisk is listed as questionable. He might not be good to go. That would change the dynamic a little bit there. Let's see. I got to catch up to you guys. You guys are way ahead of me. Sorry. D. Wine Gardner says, I'm afraid the Rams will win 27-13. Okay. John says, if we can't get Crosby, Hendrickson would be a nice backup choice. I agree. And here's the thing, too. And I did a full, that was about a month ago. I think it was during the bye week. Did a full cap reset. Seahawks are in as good a shape as anyone in the league. When you look at the contenders, the Seahawks are top 5 in available cap space for next year. But when you look at how many of those teams aren't real contenders either. Like usually it's the bad teams that have cap space. Not necessarily the case. Rams and 49ers are also in good shape. And they just don't have as many glaring needs. So they do have the flexibility. Plus, and I know I've said this about 10 times, Jeff and I talked about this today. Make sure you go watch that episode. I don't think they're bringing Kenneth Walker back. They're certainly not going to re-sign Boye Mafe. I think they'll extend Cross. I think they'll extend Derek Hall, but usually first-year cap hits are fairly low. They already have a pretty significant amount of cap space available now. Those extensions aren't going to be as painful year one as they are later on. And then on top of that, there's a ton of levers this team can pull to easily clear a bunch more cap space. You could do it with Cooper Kupp. And I'm not talking about just releasing him. I'm talking about redoing the deal. I think he loves it here so much, sees that it's near the end of his career, might want to finish his career at home. Maybe you just talk him into a Tyler Lockett type adjustment to his contract where he simply just takes a pay cut. You can adjust to Marcus Lawrence's deal, maybe add a couple void years to it to lower his cap hit, because you're certainly bringing him back. I think he's going to play out that whole 3-year contract if he stays healthy. Leonard Williams' contract is structured in such a way you can get a bunch of money cleared up that way. And then Sam Darnold. There's no question now that he's going to be here long term. And so when we first saw that contract, we thought, well, you can get out of it after 1 year without a lot of pain. They're not going to do that now. It's a big cap hit in year 2, but okay, well, I know they don't like to do extensions before the last year of a contract. Maybe it's different for quarterbacks, but you can certainly convert salary to bonus and clear cap space that way, because you're not going to worry about the dead cap hit hurting you later on that you push down the road, because he's going to be here. And so there's a lot. Off the top of my head, I think the estimate I came up with, they can pretty easily get to $80 or $90 million in cap space. The reason I say that is they could afford to bring back Reek Woolen if they want to, extend those other guys that I talked about, sign Tyler Linderbaum and sign Trey Hendrickson. They could do all of those things. That's how much flexibility they have right now with the cap. It's also a place that players are going to want to play. And so when that's the case, they're usually a little bit more flexible on contract terms. Seahawks like to structure their deals a little bit differently than other teams. And so, players want to play for a winner. And they can see the trajectory this team is on. So they could do all those things this offseason. That's just my little, it might sound like a pipe dream, but it's possible. It's doable. Dennis asks, Dan, do you think if the Hawks drafted Ratledge, we could be better than we're blocking now? Could? Yeah. I don't know. I've watched a number of Lions games, and Ratledge looks like Zabel. He looks like a rookie. He'll have some good reps. He'll have some bad reps. The learning curve is significant. Now, hindsight being 2020, you want to put those 2020 glasses on and walk down the path of revisionist history. Now that Elijah Arroyo is out for the rest of the year, did we get what we were hoping for from him in his rookie year? No. Did he give you second-round value as a rookie? No. Does it mean he's not going to be a great player for them in the future? No. But it's pretty easy now to kind of look back and go, well, we could have taken Ratledge there instead. I think you can drive yourself crazy doing those kinds of things. I don't think they were ever planning on putting 2 rookies in at both guards. I don't know how responsible that would have been. I like Ratledge. I do. I just think that you're playing with the time-space continuum a little bit too heavily. Let's see. Dennis also chips in with, the way I look at it, the Hawks have exceeded my expectations. Thought they would be 11 wins, but the defense is great. Let's get the offense going. Oh, and this must be Breece Hall. Can you blame him? He plays for the Jets. Yeah, I get that. But, Seahawk fan says, imagine Jeremiah Love to Seattle. I know it won't happen. Probably not the best pick available. He just announced, by the way, and maybe this is why you're asking that, he just announced he is declaring for the draft. But, yeah, he's not going to last till the late 20s or early 30s or pick 32. And I saw one scout quoted today as saying, I think you'll be surprised how high Love ends up going in this draft. You saw Genty go 6 in a draft class that was considered, not great, but sounds like a little bit better than this year's draft class might be. And I think you'll start to hear as we get into the draft process, you'll start to hear, well, I think Jeremiah Love is a better prospect than Ashton Genty. You're going to hear that. Trust me. Doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It's just that's what you're going to hear. This is an interesting question. I get this a lot, and so let's address it. Misfit13 Actual says, do you think Kendrick being a Ram now will hurt the defensive game plan, or the coaches know what to change? No, it doesn't hurt the game plan at all. We see teams pick up players off practice squads or whatever right before they play another team all the time. It has zero impact. The players will tell you that. The coach will tell you that. They'll change their signals. They'll account for it. Cooper Kupp, does Cooper Kupp help us to know what Sean McVay is going to call on offense? No, because Sean's going to call something different. They evolve. Their game plan's different. They're not privy to that. These are very complex offenses with very, very deep playbooks. It's not like in the old days where teams would literally run 5 or 6 plays a game, and you could learn their tells and you could figure out what's coming. I think it's completely meaningless, to be honest. Chris Paul was with the Rams in training camp. Like, does he give us an advantage? I don't know. If there is an advantage to be had, I don't think. I think it's equal with the Seahawks and Rams. Let's see. Interesting. Dad Alaskan throwing out a stat out there that I did not realize. He said A-Chain actually has more stuffed runs than Walker, 35-43. I did see a stat this week that Walker is 35th in the league in yards after first contact. A-Chain's first. So A-Chain's getting a lot more done after contact than Walker is. Let's see. Rockman says, what's up, Dan? How you doing? Yep. John says, best way to beat Stafford, keep him off the field as much as possible. Run the ball, run the clock. And you can, quote unquote, run the ball with the quick passing game too. And just get back to that. Get the ball out quick, right? And then try to hit some explosives over the top. Let's see. Looks like we had a little bit of a debate about which running back's better. Rockman says, Darnold needs a cowboy hat. His uncle is the OG Marlboro man. He is an everyman's everyman, isn't he? He loves rocking the flannel. Looks like if I ran into Sam Darnold on the street, especially if he had a trucker hat on, I would for sure think that he lived in Enumclaw. Oh, X-Wing says, since this lost out on Northwest Forever, I'm going to ask here odds we can get cut back as a wide receiver coach once he's done playing. Here's what's interesting about that, and thanks for the plug. See this website right down here, northwestforever.com, nwforever.com. That'll take you to the Patreon. You can be a member of the community there, as John and X-Wing are, and Osiris and Danny and a bunch of other guys. That's where all my content lives, under one roof. Seahawks Forever, Mariners Forever, all my videos, all my audio podcasts, anything I write on Substack, and then our Discord, which normally is where I hang out during games. I didn't Sunday because I was flying. And we're just trying to grow that. There's going to be, as it gets bigger, we'll do exclusive lives over there. There'll be exclusive material. I assure you, during Senior Bowl week, there will be material exclusive to Patreon that nobody else gets. All sorts of practice video and interviews. I'm just going to put all the raw stuff up there, clip it all together, so you'll get like 20 minutes of practice footage from each and every day. There's going to be a lot of stuff put up over there on Patreon that's not going to be available ever on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, you can either just look up Northwest Forever with Dan Viens on Patreon or go to nwforever.com. And also, again, as a reminder, speaking of the Senior Bowl, if you'd like to help contribute to the expenses of making that trip the last week of February to cover the entire Senior Bowl practices and game for you, that link is down below in the description. Let's see. J225me says, what really needs to happen is a whole new offensive line keeping Cross and Zabel. All the rest would be starting on any other good team. I think you meant to say wouldn't be starting on any other good team. Could not disagree more strongly with this. And if you don't agree with me, go back to last week and watch the episode with Ross Tucker. Made it in the NFL as an undrafted free agent, played for 7 years. He's now an analyst on CBS. In fact, I can't remember which game he did, but I was watching Red Zone on Sunday, and all of a sudden I heard his voice. I was like, yeah, that sounds familiar. That guy was just on my show 2 days ago. He talks about how, and I'm oversimplifying big time here, continuity is almost more important than talent. Offensive lines, more than any other position group on the team, have to play together and learn each other. You have to stop the revolving door. You cannot continue to swap out 3/5 of the offensive line every year. You just can't. First of all, Abe Lucas is a very good starting right tackle. Is he an all-pro? No. Is he ever going to be? No, but he's very good. If you don't believe me, go look at all the metrics. Look at tackles left on an island, how often they're left on an island, and how effective they are in pass blocking on an island. I know there's a bad rep now and again, and those stand out, but he and Charles Cross are both among the best in the league at being left on an island, believe it or not. Jalen Sundell, Olu Oluwatimi are both very capable starting centers. I know the Anthony Bradford hate. I get it. But he has played his best football the last couple of weeks. And ignore the 1 or 2 plays that people put out on Twitter and go, look how bad this guy looks. And watch the good plays. There are plays on Sunday against the Colts where he's absolutely pancaking and obliterating his guy. He's gotten remarkably better. Do I think he's going to be the starter next year? No. But I'm just saying, you have to stop the revolving door. You need continuity. If you have a chance to upgrade center and right guard with significantly better players, known quantities, not rookies, stop adding fucking rookies to this offensive line. We've drafted more offensive linemen in the last 5 years than any team in football. Stop. Add veterans. Like I said earlier, if you can get a guy like Tyler Linderbaum, that makes your line 30% better right away. And it also makes life easier on whoever the right guard's going to be. But continuity. Benton's going to be back. Dennison's going to be back. Outen's going to be back. Kubiak's going to be back. Second year in the scheme. Have these guys playing together and find one significant upgrade. And I'm telling you, this is a top 10 offensive line next year. In fact, they're top 10 right now. If you look at ESPN's pass block win rate and run block win rate. So that's my personal philosophy. I could not disagree more that the answer is yet again to flush out 3/5 of the line and fill it with what? Rookies? Maybe one big signing and 2 other rookies? And you're going to cut Abe Lucas after you just extended him and take that dead cap hit? No. Nope. Sorry, J25. I'm not, if there's tone in my voice, it's not directed at you. It's, you're the millionth person that has suggested this to me. Go back and watch tape from the last 3 years of what that offensive line looked like. And then I promise you'll go, okay, I'm okay with the direction they're heading. This is much better. Much, much better. Thank you for bringing up Kobe Bryant, Seahawk fan 21-22-1. Because I keep forgetting about him. Yeah, they're absolutely going to try to extend him. And I actually think the franchise tag might be in play for Kobe if they can't get something done before free agency starts, just to kind of get some leverage in negotiations. Although you can argue that the leverage goes to the player then, because that's a base, that annual value is a base from which to start. But they tried to get him extended before the season. He said no, betting on himself, thinking his second full year of playing safety full time, he'd make himself some money. I think he has. And so the real fascinating part will be with as good as Ty Okada has played, and with Julian Love locked up for the next couple of years, if Bryant's asking price gets to be too high, do you just let him walk and go with Okada and Love and then go draft someone, add someone else? Just throwing that out there. But I think Reek has absolutely changed his profile, and I think he's changed the minds of Seahawks coaches and brass. He's playing his best football ever since the trade deadline. And it's not a fluke. You can see the technique is better. The footwork is better. He's better with his eyes. He's better at anticipating. He's locking guys down, but he's playing good in zone. He's coming up and being physical in the run game, making big plays. The price tag might be high, and yet they might be willing to bring him back because he can lock down half of the field. And the allure of having he and Witherspoon long-term might be too good to resist. I think they'll try to bring Josh Jobe back too, but I think he's proven this year that while he'll get more money than what he's currently playing on, I think it was a 1 year, $3 million deal, right? He's not going to get top end of the market type money. He's a complimentary, he's a third corner, and I think he'll be paid accordingly. Wait a minute. Hold on, X-Wing. Oh, I love getting called out. You're right. I went off on that tangent, Yeah, I think I could see Coop wanting to coach. The problem with some of these great players is they just don't want to coach after their playing careers are over. They don't need the money. And when they get to the end of their playing career, they realize that now I can have a life that I'm in control of. He's got a family. He's got young kids. I can be home more. I get to dictate when I'm away, when I'm at home. The coaching life, you just continue on that carousel. You just keep going, and you're on the road for 6, 7, 8 months a year. I don't know if he wants to do that. If he does, I wouldn't limit it to just a wide receiver coach. I think he's a guy that I could see being an OC. He's so smart. He's in on those quarterback meetings, everything else. I could see him being a guy that, maybe he does. Maybe he takes an analyst job or a wide receivers coach job to begin with, but then he quickly, then year 2, he's passing game coordinator. Year 3, he's getting hired as an OC. I could absolutely see that. Rockman says, I said back then the trade rumors for Reek was to light a fire under his ass. I was kind of right. It worked. I don't think it was just that, right? Those two things might not correlate. We were starting to see the signs up until that point. Mike kept talking about how it's the process with Reek. And then around that time, a couple of weeks before the trade deadline, Coach Derek from All 22 Films did a breakdown on Reek and talked about some of his technique and how he thought it looked like he was sort of stuck in between what the Carroll coaches were teaching him and what he's being taught now, which was interesting because Carl Scott was held over from that staff. But it's different footwork, it's different technique, and that he wasn't quite grasping it. So I think something clicked with him at the same time. Just like I've had people say, well, shouldn't have started Sundell, should have stuck with Oluwatimi because we ran the ball better while Sundell was out. That's true. But A, Sundell's a better pass protector, and they may have just simply felt that that's the bigger priority right now. And B, A plus B doesn't equal C in that case. You can't prove that Oluwatimi's presence is what made the running game better. Some other things may have clicked at the same time. So we'd need a larger sample size to see that. If we get to the end of the season and Sundell is still the starting center and they're running for less than 100 yards a game, well, then you can make a pretty strong case that, hey, look at these 5 games, and then where they averaged 140 yards rushing, as they did the 5 games leading into the Colts game on Sunday, and now look at these final 4 games where they averaged, 80. Okay, that's some pretty compelling evidence. I can get behind that. Rockman says, I think our run plays are too obvious. Kubiak has to be more unpredictable with our run plays. You hear a lot of the people on offense talk about how everything's disguised, everything looks different, but I do think you might be onto something when situationally. There was a stat 2 weeks ago where the number of times following an incompletion on 1st and 10, the number of times that the Seahawks ran it then on 2nd and 10 was number 1 in the league. And you just can't, that's the kind of self-scouting you need to do. You need to be aware of that. You can't let that be a tell that we're just going to run it on 2nd and 10 if we throw incomplete on 1st down. Because, obviously teams are going to catch on to that. Even the bad teams. The good teams are going to catch on and then also be able to stop it. Yeah, John says Kupp enjoys the leadership role. That's why I think he's going to be amenable this offseason to adjusting his contract. I think he's going to want to stick around and be here. And I think the team's going to want him here, just not at that number. Let's check in on that, shall we? Shall we do a little screen share and look at some salary cap situation here? Why not? Let's do this. Okay. Give me a second, guys. Screen share. And here we go. Okay. So, now. All right. So this is, let's actually go here because it'll take that away. Thanks for hanging with me. There it is with nothing blocking the way. So first of all, let's go to calculator and then you go to 2026. You can see $73.6 million in cap space next year. They also have 17 this year that they can roll over. However, some of that will be sucked up in some of the escalators and the incentives, the program the NFL has, where if you play a certain amount of snaps, you automatically get bonused. You get a raise. So some of it will come out of that. But let's say just for shits and giggles that it's 10. So that has you at like 83.6. And that's before like Leonard Williams, $15.8 million base salary. Darnold, $12.3. Nwosu's deal, his cap number is $20 million. It's the last year of his deal. I expect them to extend that by a couple of years. So that'll drop his number. Kupp's number is 17.5, but his base salary is 13. You can convert some of that to bonus and clear some of that space. So you could easily adjust his contract. You can add a couple void years to it, and which they've been willing to do under Joey Lane the last couple of years, and drop that cap number. DeMarcus Lawrence, same thing. His cap number is 11.3, but his base salary is 8.1. So you could easily convert some of that. Cross will get extended. I've done some projections, though, and because his contract's going to be so big, it's probably going to fall in that 10 to 15 range as far as left tackle's average annual value goes. His cap number might not go down a whole lot in year one. There's an opportunity there with Julian Love and Ernest Jones, too, to clear a little bit of cap space, too, maybe even Jaron Reed. So they could get to $100 million in cap space pretty easily, which would allow them to extend Woolen, to extend Bryant. You could bring Josh Jones back again. You could bring Josh Jobe back again. And you could go out and be aggressive in free agency like we talked about earlier. So just always kind of fun to check in on some of that stuff. Let's see what we got. Rockman, new member. You're not a new member. Did you just become a YouTube member? How dare you? How dare you? John says, I could see them using the tight ends more to establish the run. Yeah, we haven't seen very much 13 personnel from Kubiak this year at all. But maybe now that Saubert's got his feet under him, he's back for another week. Callerup, as you said, John, has shown himself to be a really good run blocker. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. That could be really cool. And then I do think we're going to see a big second-year jump out of Elijah Arroyo. I think he's going to have a nice career as a Seahawk, and I think he'll be a more dynamic aspect of the roster. The other guy, which speaking of dynamic, that I didn't mention as far as extension candidates go, is Rashid Shaheed. Both sides have said they want to make that happen. I think they will, and it sounds like Shaheed would be amenable to whatever structure is necessary for him to get paid, get some security, get recognition, and also for the Seahawks to be able to still have some flexibility in their cap. Well, guys, that was an easy hour and a half, wasn't it? Appreciate you all being here. Again, you can follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Check the description down below for all the other ways that you can help support me as an independent full-time content creator, including a direct link that can allow you to directly contribute to expenses to travel to Senior Bowl. Tune in tomorrow for NFC West mixtape. That'll be out probably 3 o'clock-ish Pacific time. And then at 7 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow, the Seattle Syndicate Roundtable fires up again, taking a hard look to the Rams game the following night. That's me, Bryce Coots, Brandon Kane, and Mookie Alexander. and then we'll be reacting. I know it's a late game on Thursday, but you know what? I just had 5 days without any content, so I'll just suck it up and do a reaction show after the Rams game on Thursday, hopefully celebrating a big win. Let's do this. Hold on. Oh, I forgot to play this earlier. I always forget that I have these little hits. I was going to use this. This is, I can't remember which game. Maybe it was the Houston game where Darnold, where this quote is from, but this certainly would apply to Sunday.
Oh, man. What a weird game.
This from Geno Smith from earlier in the year would also apply to Sunday.
That's football, brother.
That's just football. Sometimes football is not pretty. But hopefully Thursday will be this. This is JSN shortly before the first game that he played with Rashid Shaheed, making a prediction on what they were going to see with those two on the field at the same time.
A lot of blur, going to go on.
A lot of blur. Hopefully we'll see a lot of blur on Thursday. Let's take you out this way, shall we? Check out nwforever.com. Get signed up over there. Become part of the community. Also, if you happen to be down in Soto going to the game on Thursday, or you just want to be around the game and enjoying it, go to Fast Fashion Brewing on 1st Avenue in Seattle, right next to Hooverville, across the street from Showbox Soto. Some of the best beers in Seattle. Their Bavarian Pilsner, named one of the top 20 craft beers in the nation. Go say hi to Matt Storm, tell him I sent you, and enjoy some of the tastiest beers in Seattle. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Watch for the programming tomorrow that I mentioned, and we'll see you on Thursday. Forever and always, go Hawks.